follows us on any form of social media? Like, we're big on Facebook mostly. Oh, just one, okay.
I'll follow you right now.
I don't have social media, so I will not do that.
What do I look up?
Just Center for Prophetic Imagination.
Okay.
We're on Facebook, Instagram, Threads. We're on Twitter, but like since Threads came out, it's like we'll just use that. Keep everything in house, and it's just so much easier. Because the only thing we were using Twitter for was like to make little comments and then screenshot it and post it on our social media that has more of an audience. So we're like, we'll just do Threads, and then you can just hit a button and it shares it. So yeah, if you want to follow us there. Anyways, for those who don't know what Center for Prophetic Imagination is, we are an organization that's focused on spiritual direction and social transformation. We have a 2-year certificate program, which we are taking some more applicants actually, and that's open until July 31st. Just putting a little advertisement out there before it really gets started. If you're like interested in becoming a spiritual director, it's not towards a degree, but it is a certificate program to become a spiritual director, and it focuses on social transformation. And that's really what CPI has been about, is engaging spirituality in a lot of like contemplative practices in a way that pushes towards social justice. Right now, we are staffed by we have 2 staff members, so we're a small organization. Both of us are trans women, so we are very, very kind of focused on like what is going on in the world right now, especially with trans rights and the attacks on trans youth, things like that. So that's been on the forefront of our minds, kind of because it affects us more clearly, but we also recognize the fact that any form of queer phobia is actually inherently tied to white supremacy. And just the truth of the fact is, we live in a product of a Eurocentric understanding that has enforced white ideologies on the rest of the world, whenever other cultures have had better understandings of gender and sexuality. Instead of like going, oh hey, maybe we should learn something, we went, oh hey, you're wrong, and we need to erase your culture. So the truth of the matter is, you can't tackle queer phobia without also tackling racial injustice. So that's a little speech of like who we are. It's very broad, it's not very specific. We are honestly just trying to like help people move towards like an understanding of intersectionality as it comes to social justice, because it is all interconnected. So, but specifically today, we are focusing on solidarity. How many of you go to a church that is recognized as open and affirming, or whatever your denomination equivalent is? So yeah, like most people, or about half, I guess. Gonna guess maybe the other half don't go to church anymore. That's fair too, because
Working towards it. Yeah. Working towards welcome and affirming.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
What's denomination?
Baptist.
Baptist.
Nice.
Wow.
Whoa.
Nice.
Good luck.
You can get there.
You can do it.
You can do it.
Yeah, there are Baptist churches that have done it, but like, dang, good luck.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. So a lot of churches are moving towards being open and affirming. I'm going to use that. I'm tied to Disciples of Christ. That's our affirming program. I know United Methodist Church has reconciliation ministries. Like everybody has their own thing if they're working towards it. I'm going to use open and affirming because I'm Disciples of Christ, and you guys can translate it. Anyways, most denominations, or not most, a lot of mainline denominations have programs set in place to become affirming, right? We are asking the question, is that enough, or is that the first step? And to us, we believe that that's the first step. I'm going to actually pull up my notes so I know what I'm talking about a little bit. Yeah, so like I am very active on Twitter, on my own, like my own stuff that's kind of anonymous, but I have fun like engaging with trolls. I don't know why. We'll engage the trolls on our social media to a point, but I also have rules for like cutting off conversations and different things. So it's not quite the same. Anyways, I got this comment, and I get it a lot, but this is the one I copied and pasted. It's, what's it like to develop an entire identity around the sexual sin you desire? This is a guy named Dave from Twitter. And I don't know, he's probably an anonymous account, doesn't matter. But like, it might be him, like believing this, but he's not the only one. Like this is something I've heard a lot. But this also highlights kind of an issue that we are seeing in our culture where sexual orientation, gender identity is what is defining a person. And
something just happened to your microphone.
Something happened, or did I just
It's coming apart at the bottom.
Oh, just
You're coming unplugged right there.
Yes.
Okay, just let me know if we need to swap it out. But it highlights this issue of we have a culture that looks at gender identity, sexual orientation, and we are able to determine the entirety of a human's existence based off that fact. So this guy named Dave, like, I was the sole, I was solely the sexual desire that or built up in the sexual desire I had, according to him, right? And so, like, for people like Dave, my queerness is something that actually makes me non-human, because it is used to diminish my humanity in a way that really reduces it down to one aspect, right? I don't know about you, most people are actually more than one aspect. Like, your gender and your sexual orientation, like, those are big things about who you are, but like, you're also so much more. Like, I am training for a marathon, I am writing books. Like, there's so much more going on that to me and to who I am as a person, like, than me being queer. But because we live in a culture that sees that as a what is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
We live in a world that sees things outside of the normative as something that should be othered, essentially. And being able to reduce somebody's humanity because of their gender or orientation is just inherent into our culture. And the problem is, we actually still see this in our affirming churches. And when I say that, like, I want to take a moment. Like, the truth is, like, affirming churches, what you have all done has been, it's been big. It's not been easy. I know our church, when we became affirming, we lost like 5 families, which it's a really old Disciples of Christ. It's been around for 100 years. 5 families is like a quarter of the church.
Yeah.
But and that's real loss. That's real loss of community. That's real loss. Honestly, that's real loss of income for like pastors. So I don't want to diminish the process of affirming. However, at the same time, the process of becoming affirming is still your church gathering and talking about queerness, talking about theology, debating like the best way to understand this, talking about how the Bible interprets gender and sexuality, and then at the very end, your church takes a vote to either become affirming or not become affirming. So even in these spaces, the entire process is still set up to center essentially the white cishet male experience, and then that is what is placed on a pedestal, And then the process of affirmation is those with power saying, oh, you can join us. But see, the problem is whenever those with power say, oh, you can join us, that's still them holding power and saying, yeah, you can be in here or you can't. And we still haven't actually gotten to the place where we are disrupting that entire hierarchy that we see in affirming churches. And so, like, to us, that is one of the biggest reasons why affirmation has to be the first step. And solidarity needs to be what we're working towards. Because we are still dealing with the fact that queer people do not ontologically belong in our most affirming churches. Yes, we are welcomed in. Sometimes we are invited into leadership. Sometimes even some of us become pastors of these churches, but at the same time, the way that it is structured, the way that our entire our entire church existence is based off of a structure that centers the white cishet male experience. And we haven't even started to talk about that. So what this means is, for people like Dave, I am non-human. But even in our affirming churches, I am still non-human. Because the human is still the person with power that can give it or take it away. And so this is why we really think that the next step in the process is solidarity, where we need to actually address like the ontological acceptance of queer people in our spaces. Like, instead of just seeing queer people or our affirmation as this theological position that we get to come to Wild Goose and put up pride flags and say, hey, you're welcomed here, like, that's great, but at the same time, if we're not taking the time to understand that we are fundamentally set up in a way that does not ontologically accept queer people, we're never going to get there. So, then the question is, what does that look like? How do we actually take steps to be in solidarity? Well, luckily for most of you, you live in a time whenever things like trans rights are a big thing. I'm not lucky for you because it sucks, honestly. But you live in a time where trans rights are being attacked. You live in a time of don't say gay going on in places like Florida. Right now, the talking point is queerness. Churches now have an opportunity to actually extend and start working towards a new narrative that undermines the ideology of this is the Christian position. So let's face it, for as much as we have separation of church and state, in theory, we don't.
Yeah.
We have an entire one political party that has basically co-opted evangelicalism and has made it the same thing. But then on the other side, we have another political party that, like, still most of them kind of signal towards Christianity that still hasn't got its act together to say that queer people are ontologically accepted. So really, we kind of have two like conservative systems, and so let that be known because we are a nonprofit. I am not endorsing any political party, if you can't tell, but we couldn't because we don't agree with either either major political party. So there is actually an opportunity for churches to step up and change the narrative, but also step up and stand in solidarity with queer people. And that'll look different in I think I'm done with that, so I'm gonna set this down. This is weird. That actually sets us up in a way to ask the question, what does it look like to actually join in solidarity? It's gonna look different in different places. I live in Georgia, which Georgia is like not as bad as Florida, but It's still pretty bad. Like, I'm pretty sure, because there's enough progressive people in like Atlanta that we're able to slow it down just a little bit, but the powers that be would follow Florida, like whatever. Anyways, here's the thing that I learned this year, trying to be an activist. Like, I've spoken at our state capitol. I have been there in the hearings when they're talking about removing, they were talking about removing any reference to basically any reference to the idea that trans people could exist within our education system. It ended up getting shut down, not because they cared about the existence of trans people, but because there was enough Christian people that said, hey, look, there's an unintended consequence here that might actually start removing like cis-het normativity, and that's why it got shut down. So like, I guess a win is a win, but they're going to come back with the same thing with different language in the next cycle. But here's the thing, things that are controversial when you live in a state that is conservative, primarily conservative, and yes, Georgia went blue for presidency and for the Senate, it is not a blue state. Like, the state government is not blue. When something is going to be controversial, where they think that activists will show up, they will announce it either the night before or the day before, or the day of, like morning of. So people like me, like I have 2 kids, right? They're in school. I have to drop them off, I have to pick them up. Now, I want to be an activist. I want to show up. I want to be like, hey, I'm a Christian. I am trans. Let's like this isn't okay. But at the same time, I got to pick up my kids when they get out of school. I have to make dinner. I have to like. The fact is somebody like me, I want to be there, but I can't sometimes because there's not enough time for me to like plan it, get childcare, whatever. My partner also works. She's the one that brings in like the actual money. Like, gas, working part time for a nonprofit like doesn't bring in the money to So like taking care of. I'm the one that takes care of the kids. I'm the mom at home, but also working and doing other stuff. These are the people that like are trying to show up to be activists. Not. There are more people, obviously. Now look at your like traditional affirming Protestant mainline church, right? Who is in those churches primarily? Retired people. Like, I get it. You guys, you have your things and stuff, but can you imagine if a church like set up a group that's like, hey, this is what's going on politically. Let's talk about it. We're going to like learn the talking points. We're going to equip the people within our group to actually be able to speak on it. And what if they were the ones who were ready to go whenever they drop the fact that they drop the agenda day of, and somebody needs to be there to defend trans kids sometime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Right? And you don't know when it's going to be, so you can't just like, oh, well, if they talk about it at noon, that's good for me. No, it's like, it'll show up sometime, probably, maybe, during that day. Like, seriously, use your retirement time to like help protect trans kids. That's one way you can do it. You can also like make sure that you're paying attention to things in your school system, because I was state level. Like, school systems are talking about this, right? City councils are talking about this. I'll be honest, I won't put national level stuff necessarily on Aldi because that's pretty big. But the truth is, if the church wants to stay relevant, wants to actually make affirmation mean something, the church has to do more. And doing more means actually going outside of your church walls and engaging the world around you. You can have an open table, like that's a big thing within Disciples of Christ when you're affirming. It's having an open table. You can have an open table all you want if you don't have an open state. Like, people can't show up if they can't live in your state, right? How are you going to actually affirm and love and support people if they can't live in the place that you exist in? And honestly, the number of people fleeing states like Florida is incredibly high. Like, there is a need right now for the church to understand that, yes, welcoming us in, letting us use your bathrooms however we see fit, like, that is great. It is great. But at the same time, if you're leaving it there, you're going to watch the genocide of queer people throughout the United States. And there are going to be open and affirming and loving congregations that sit back and watch as genocide happens because in their church walls, they feel like they did enough. And see, the thing is, like, at CPI, we truly believe in a radical Jesus, right? Like, we believe in the Jesus that went and, like, was killed by the Roman Empire. We're saying some very subversive things. Like, the beginning of Matthew is Jesus came to save the people from their sins, right? And, like, we get all tangled up in our 2,000 years of theological understanding of the word sin and, like, ignore the fact that Matthew is actually referencing something else, not our 2023 idea of sin. Like, to Matthew, saving people from their sin, their sin was the sin of the nation that led to oppression under Rome. So saving people from their sins is actually saving people from Roman oppression. Like, Matthew starts off his book and is like, Jesus came to subvert the Roman Empire. Like, if the church wants to follow Jesus, like, you better get ready to be crucified by state violence, right? And the fact is we have churches that are like, oh, we're doing enough, while they're going to watch trans kids be crucified by state violence. That's not the church. That's not Jesus. Okay, I'm not going to pull a no true Scotsman. It is a church. But there is a way to follow Jesus that will actually change a narrative. That will change the narrative that Christianity and queerness can't be together. Or that queerness and spirituality can't be together. We have a culture that is built upon a Christian supremacist foundation. Like, as much as we want to say our nation was, our nation is not a Christian nation when it was founded. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, they put that in place. However, our nation was founded during a time where all ideologies were derived from a Eurocentric Enlightenment understanding of the world, which came from their understanding of Christianity. So yes, we don't have a Christian nation, but at the same time, we have a Christian nation based off of our ideologies. And if churches want to help queer people, they have to change that understanding. They have to subvert that understanding. They have to be willing to show up. Be willing to show up. Hold my flag while I use the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to hold my flag and be seen as one of me, you're not in solidarity.
Yeah.
You're showing up for yourself. So we need the church to show up because it is the right thing to do. Because people are facing real oppression, real state violence, real erasure. And we are facing a time where genocide is happening on a cultural level, and we're starting to get to the place where it could happen on the physical level. Mm-hmm. And if the church doesn't take the next step, it's going to watch it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So on that happy note, that has been like why we are so passionate about solidarity, why we are really focusing on the next few years on what it means to be in solidarity as opposed to just being affirming. We have a website up for this. It's called queersolidarity.com. Super easy to remember. It's brand new and it's still kind of a work in process, but it's there so you can read more about like why we're doing this, and there's like a contact form, and if you want resources, like if you want us to help, like go to your church and help you guys like develop a plan, maybe not go to your church, I don't know where you guys live, but Zoom's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Help you like develop a plan to actually like put in place solidarity, like let us know. We want to be a resource because I mean honestly our goal is not to make the church survive. Like that's not our goal. Our goal is to actually have queer people survive. So yeah, if that interests you, please queersolidarity.com, just fill out one of the forms. It's going to go to, actually goes to my email. So, you can also contact us on social media and stuff like that. But yeah, any questions, comments? I don't know how much time I have.
15.
I have 15 minutes, so.
I have a question.
Awesome.
It was really powerful to hear you say I fall into the category of religion where I have an open table mentality, not an open state mentality. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. That's really powerful. I am struggling a little bit with converting the minds of my community over converting a political system that feels inherently broken. I know how to fight locally. I don't know how to fight politically.
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk a little bit about how, I'm not asking you to tell me how to find balance in those things, but
okay, so I'm gonna do a hard truth up front.
Yep.
And then I'll step it back.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you deal? Like, we understand how to deal with this stuff on a large scale, but how do we deal with it more on the community scale?
Yeah.
The blunt part is you're probably gonna have to leave some people behind.
Yeah.
And that's just the truth of it. Like, whenever we put it into perspective, a person that's safe, it isn't ready to like move with you.
Yep.
Like trying to get them to come with you is great, but if it's gonna put somebody who's in danger and more danger, then it might be time to cut that off and move forward and hope they catch up on their own. And you know, we actually do see a lot of movement within spiritual circles where there's actually a good chance they will catch up. It won't be as fast as they want it, but it could happen. So that's the first like blunt truth. Like, it's kind of like coming out. I came out to a conservative family. I lost a good chunk of my family. If you aren't queer yourself and you're worried about losing family, well, congratulations, you understand just like a sliver of what it's like to be queer. But other than that, because I don't want to be completely like pessimistic, just want to be like honest about it. I think working through the understanding of urgency, the understanding of like where we actually are in our culture, like the talking points against trans people, like we realize we heard these 80 years ago, right? The Nazis used the exact same talking points that conservatives are using today.
Yes.
The first book burning was not Jewish books. It was studies on gender identity and sexual orientation.
Yes.
Like there is a pattern that is happening.
Yeah.
And we actually do see the anti-Semitism showing up now too. Like there is a pattern. So like helping people understand like what is going on, because a lot of us live in our own worlds, right? Like before my A cracked and I realized I was trans, like it didn't bother me. It was not something I thought of. And then like once I realized it, then it was like the world just crashed down around me because it turns out like everything is interconnected, and like oppression and marginalization comes from a lot of different aspects. So it's really like it's a really big topic that often we miss because it doesn't actually affect our world in a way that forces us to acknowledge it. So just helping people come along and understand like things like, so in Atlanta has the highest wage gap between racial identities than any other major city in the United States. The average white person makes 3 times more than the average black person. That's local, right? Just helping people see what is showing up in their lives around them helps a lot. But there's still going to be people that are going to be like, nah, that's woke nonsense, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, did that help at all?
It
I'm
does.
not sure.
It's hard to confront that I don't want to fight against a system that is serving me.
Yeah.
I want to
Right.
fight with it in a way that feels convenient.
Yeah.
And it's really good to be confronted with, it's not my job to be comfortable right now. I would really like to hold your flag for you.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you taking the
Of
time.
course, yeah. Anyone else? Because we have a few minutes. No? Oh, Jennifer.
I want to ask specifically, you and I are both parents, how we can get our kids more involved in this kind of ideology and pushing towards solidarity, even at school, even in friend groups and circles, just, somebody who is interested in really, really helping to make queer spaces safer.
I know between me and you, I'm sure I'm speaking exactly what you already know. Like, my goal as a parent is to normalize queerness. I've kind of come to my goal when it comes to gender identity and sexual orientation in front of kids is kind of like, I don't want them to come out to me. Not because I don't want them to be queer. I want them to feel safe enough that they don't feel like they just have to come up and tell me. I want them to just be themselves.
That's good.
Like, as a parent, and I don't know if kids ages or have kids, but like, as a parent for myself, like, that is truly what I want. I don't think it's gonna happen because there's too much cultural influences, but I want to be accepting of my kids to a level where they don't feel like they have to come out. That starts with normalizing, starts with talking about it. Like, honestly, there really isn't an age in which kids are too young to learn about oppression. Living in the South, we lived in a smaller town before Atlanta, and they would talk about slavery at a very young age, but it was very like Southern molded. so like we decided to have those actual conversations about like what was going on in here and stuff. And like kids actually understand oppression more than we think. Probably because they actually understand injustice on a level that we come to just justify injustice.
Right.
Whereas kids are like, hey, that doesn't seem right. I think it's wrong. And so being able to talk with kids, normalizing the conversation, normalizing queerness, I think goes honestly a long way. That's my like. This is simply me trying as a parent, because if you have kids, like, you're just trying and hoping that they stay alive. Like,
I think my daughter was embarrassed when she came out to me. Like, my daughter is 11, and she's like, you know that I'm pan, right? And I'm like, I'm so sorry I didn't pick up the cues, but like, I think she was like upset that I didn't intuit it.
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old, and I have suspicions on her sexual orientation. But I'm like, we made sure to talk about it and stuff like that. if she really has like this attitude because we talk about it so much, she's just like, I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. Like, I just want to go do my thing.
You already said that.
Yeah, and like, I'm over there like, I want to support you, and she's just like, just go away. Yes.
Yeah, I really love that you kept on saying the word normalize. I have a school K to second, and I'm a mom of young children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we start normalizing by normalizing play.
Mm-hmm.
Everything starts with play. When the children are able to express themselves in play,
Mm-hmm.
there's no judgment. There's no failing in play. You can dress up. You can be whomever you want. And then once they have such security in such environment, they can continue being themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all from play. That becomes then your life.
And yeah, what you're talking about there with kids and play, like, honestly, open play without expectations is super, in my opinion, super important. Like, I don't know, most of you have probably seen, like, the ramblings of conservatives calling queer people groomers and pedophiles and all that stuff. Like, our culture grooms children to be cishet.
Yes.
That's just the truth. Like, our culture is set up in a way that cishet is so normalized that we make it foundational to children's understandings.
Right.
That can come out in extremely toxic ways, in the way that like we expect boys, like children, to play with normal boy toys. There might be a statistical like overlap of gender and what toys kids play with. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure because we've not ever been able to look at it outside of a cultural context.
Right.
But there might be. But why would you care if your 3-year-old plays with a Barbie?
Right.
Like, that is a level of sexualization on the adult that is placing that on the child.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the sexualization of children, like, the fact is the things that we have normalized in our culture are sexualizing our children. Yeah, and movies. However, I will say, queerness showing up in kids' movies has been nice. I want it more. I want main characters to be queer more. But like, I don't know if you've watched Elemental. Elemental is really good. And, the sibling of one of the main characters has a lesbian sister. The movie Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, like the main character's best friend is a lesbian. So like it's showing up and that's happening and that's awesome. Like I don't know, maybe since we're in religious spaces, what if religious spaces got ahead of Hollywood?
What?
Like, why do churches always have to be the ones like trying to catch up?
Right. Amen.
Let's maybe take a step out. Take a step out on faith. I don't know, whatever phrase you want to use, and like maybe you be the radical, like Jesus was a radical, right?
Right. Yes.
I should have just like had to watch this. Oh, we have 2 minutes. So, any more questions? If not, then I'll just end the session early because I think getting within 10 minutes of my closing is actually pretty good. But I will hang out at least for like the next 10 minutes, if not longer, for whoever wants to talk. Not in like the group setting, and just ask whatever. I'll hang out and just
Thank you so much.
That was so good.
I mean, let's stop it.
Yeah.
I want her to come speak to my children.
Oh yeah. I'll make sure to